unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego Unpacked. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. It looks like Anthony Joshua's team have secured a hefty site fee to bring the fight Joshua Ruiz 2 to Saudi Arabia, but some problems have now arisen. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, and the Patreon family. We work, and let's jump right into it. Mike Coppinger of The Athletic, he released a tweet. It says, sources tell that Eddie Hearns has secured a site fee in excess of $40 million to bring Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Anthony Joshua 2 to Saudi Arabia. Ruiz's purse was set in the rematch clause, a fixed guaranteed, so he won't see any of that money. But he does get his neutral site. Ruiz signed a contract for the original fight that contained a rematch clause that guaranteed him around $9 million for the rematch. Wow. This is horseshit for Andy Ruiz, who was brought on, late terms because Gerald Big Baby Miller failed a drug test. And according to this report, he signed on to get basically a flat fee. This is what they offered Wilder to begin with, Team Joshua being they, right? And it's actually less money than they offered Deontay Wilder. So now that Andy Ruiz Jr. has defeated Anthony Joshua, he kind of gets the short end of the stick if this goes through. One, Saudi Arabia, and I'm going to do a separate video about this. I don't know if it's that much of a neutral site because Joshua has, I think, some connections there because he's always over there in the UAE and in Dubai and stuff like that. So I don't know that it's as neutral as they're trying to portray. Now, DAZN, they have to get it straight because they've been going through some hurdles trying to make fights with Canelo. They fell apart, never happened. At least for now, Kovalev, Derevyanchenko, these different fights like that. And then now they're saying Andy Ruiz Jr. hasn't okayed this, and he's not good with the terms or the fight being in Saudi Arabia. He wants more money and different things like that. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the two can hash out. But I don't blame Andy Ruiz Jr., to be honest, because Saudi Arabia is not necessarily a location known for hosting several boxing fights. So what's up with the commission? What's up with the drug testing? Other questions based on customs and cultural differences. Are women allowed to work? Like if there's a female reporter or a female that works for DAZN, these different types of things. Plus, some people may not economically be able to travel from Mexico or California to go see that Saudi Arabia. Plus, they're saying the venue only holds about 6,000 to 7,000. And someone even said, and I haven't confirmed this, but they said the venue is not even finished being constructed. So it's just like a weird location that they would bring a major fight that has roots in America, because that's where it all started, and ties to the UK and also Mexico because of the fighters, and they take it to Saudi Arabia out of all places, And Joshua himself has already been caught contradicting himself several times. He says he wanted to go back to the scene of the crime and rewrite his wrong, and he didn't have a panic attack, but it doesn't look like he's willing to prove it by happening in New York. And we know that DAZN would prefer for this fight to happen in New York because they're trying to explode in the US market and get subscribers. I live in California, so I'm on Pacific Standard Time, and Saudi Arabia is 10 hours ahead of me. So depending on what time they plan on airing it, it's going to be inconvenience for somebody. It's going to be either really early in the morning that the fight happens for Saudi Arabians who plan on going to see it live, or it's going to come on not during primetime hours in the United States and parts of Mexico and stuff like that. So really weird situation and kind of a conundrum. I was wondering why Andy Ruiz Jr., after Team Joshua, Matchroom, their side, Anthony Joshua, they all announced the fight for Saudi Arabia and had flyers. And I never seen Andy Ruiz even comment it. So I don't think him and his team are content. And they might be legally trying to find a way around it. And people speculate that they might have a way around it because Saudi Arabia is for travel. It's on they have like a rating system of places to visit, like Mexico or different places. And Saudi Arabia is a level 2. You know, they have certain issues and certain things that are inherent. They have drone attacks and bombings and different things that have happened. So it's a level 2 out of 4 rating. So for safety concerns, he could use that, you know, as is like, hey, I don't want to fight, take it over here. But, you know, it doesn't really seem like the most convenient location for the most people and boxing fans in general. You know, I understand that they're offering a lot of money in Saudi Arabia. There's definitely a lot of wealthy and affluent people out there, but it sounds like a money grab for Eddie Hearn. It's like almost an insurance. Like, I'm just going to get a shit ton of money, put it where it benefits me just in case Joshua gets knocked out again. At least we generated a lot of money from this particular fight. It seems like that's the number one goal, number one concern, because I don't really consider it neutral grounds like they're saying. I think Joshua has more connections to that region than Andy Ruiz. And the $9 million is definitely on the low side, because you gotta think about it. Just the site fee alone has been offered just from the Saudi Arabian investors. They've offered over $40 million, in excess of $40 million. So when you start adding Sky Sports, they'll probably pay for the rights and DAZN and stuff, merchandise and whatever else, like ticket sale, you know, whatever else goes into the whole pot. This could be a fight totality worth a lot of money, 65, 70 million, or, you know, whatever the situation is. And you got Andy Ruiz stuck at a flat rate. Now, you could say in Eddie Hearn's defense that they contracted it and wrote the contract like that and put it out there, but we all know that's bullshit. If you look at Andy Ruiz Jr.'s performance, right, the 4 knockdowns, becoming unified, he definitely is deserving of a percentage split or whatnot. And this is part of the games that we've seen with Team Joshua. Very pompous, prima donna type games that are being played, A-side this, A-side that. And it'll be nice to see Ruiz win, just to rid boxing of all of this. You know, people just ultimately want to see good boxing, competitive fights, and really not have to deal with all this politics and this, that, and the third, A-side this and A-side. Like, people took what Floyd had in his career and earned, and now they're not even willing to earn it, but they want to call the shots and be this ultimate shot caller and, you know, let fights marinate so it's worth more, like Pacquiao, Mayweather. You know, it's a lot of these fighters, they're not Mayweather and they're not Pacquiao. They haven't put up millions of pay-per-view numbers independently and considered generational fighters and anomalies. Some of these guys will lose, have lost, those types of things. So you can't compare to certain major fights from history like Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd also does a lot more than Anthony Joshua in terms of showmanship and selling the fight. Joshua, his personality seems rather bland. So it's just a different time. That's, you know, with streaming and different things available to fans, it's just a whole different era of boxing. And people are trying to milk the game and stuff like that. So I really think Andy Ruiz, it's going to be interesting to see what happens and legally what he could do if Saudi Arabia will be like green lighted for this particular fight. There's a lot of questions, but this is a bad look for me to DAZN, because DAZN keeps going through these perils where their fight seems so hard to get over the line. They're talking about Jaime Munguia versus Jesse Vargas, and then all of a sudden negotiations ultimately go nowhere. They say Canelo versus Andrade are in serious talks, ultimately go nowhere. Canelo versus Sergey Kovalev ultimately fizzle out and go nowhere. Now Kovalev's in a dangerous fight with his mandatory Anthony Yard. They say Canelo versus Caleb Smith, no offer being made. They said Canelo's interested in Jaime Munguia. DAZN won't approve it. Canelo trilogy with Golovkin. Canelo don't want to fight, and then now this Joshua situation where they announced the fight, and then now it doesn't look like Andy Ruiz's side is announcing the fight. I ain't seen nothing from PBC. I ain't seen nothing from Andy Ruiz. So it looks like they're not okay with the deal wholeheartedly, want more money or whatever, or don't like the location, whatever the situation is. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting in the coming weeks. More and more time keeps burning. And I do believe Andy Ruiz, I get that he signed whatever contract. He signed a contract on 5-6 week notice for an opportunity and was trying to pull up the upset. And he did it, and how he did it. But Eddie Hearn's games and whatnot of trying to lock him into a flat fee to tap out how much money he can make so they can win anyway. Like even if Joshua loses, then he can limit how much money the person makes in the rematch. It's just too many games and stuff like that. And I think he's definitely worth a percentage split. This is also a problem with DAZN, who said they're getting rid of pay-per-view and pay-per-view's dead. So that's another reason why you see some of these clauses, because this is not a pay-per-view fight, at least in America, if it goes on DAZN. So that limits your money. Before, if it was a pay-per-view fight, you can bank on all the Mexican Americans that may want to support Andy Ruiz, or Mexican fighters or Mexican fans from Mexico who live in the States. You could rely on that, or just boxing fans, Americans. You could rely on that to help this become a successful pay-per-view. But DAZN, for whatever reason, they're trying to do everything and be self-sufficient without pay-per-view. And it's just not quite working. And so now you got Andy Ruiz, who's not happy with his purse, probably not happy with the location, and limited to $9 million. But Eddie Hearn's getting this $40-50 million just in the site fee. Where's the rest of the money going to? Eddie Hearn and Rematch Room and Joshua? That's fucked up. If this situation that they're currently in, this has happened far too many times, and I think this is the straw that broke the camel's back, and this is the icing on the cake. If this doesn't let you know what the real problem was between making Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, then I question how much you know about the situation and if you're a fair critic. To me, this is 1000% proof of who the real culprit for that fight not happening between Joshua and Wilder. Because how is Joshua consistently in a situation where he's this A side and all of these opponents have had some level of negotiation with him, and they all complain about feeling lowballed, or the public feels the offer was a lowball, those types of things. You could go down. Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, they offered him $12.5 million last year, flat fee, no pay-per-view. And people were like, what the fuck? Wilder was even like, oh. Wilder ultimately was willing to settle for like 15, 17 million after Joshua rejected $50 million. Wilder was just like, whatever, I just want to fight this dude and knock him out. And then they still didn't accept that. And then they got the WBA involved, who ordered the Povetkin fight and said, hey, you got 48 hours, 24 hours to announce the Povetkin fight. We're done waiting. You have to fight your mandatory. So a convenient escape route. Now we never seen Wilder and Joshua. And when they were both undefeated, now Joshua done lost to another American for far less money. And it looked worse because Ruiz doesn't look like the part. Ruiz, that was clearly his best win. He had already fought for a title against Joseph Parker and lost. And Joshua lost to a guy who looked pudgy, who only had 5 weeks to train, which would have been less embarrassing to lose to a power puncher who's 6'7", athletic, looks in shape and has dynamite in his gloves. You get what I'm saying? So this whole thing, this proves to me, it's just, how does it keep happening to Eddie Hearn and Team Joshua if they're not the culprit? Again, Wilder got lowballed with 12.5 million, and then 15, 17 million or whatever it was. Just a year later, when Wilder met up with John Skipper and DAZN independently, they were willing to offer him a 3-fight deal for $100 million. They said $20 million for a fight like Dominic Brazil. Then allegedly it was going to be Joshua and a Joshua rematch for $40 million and $40 million. Why is Andy Ruiz in a situation where he may only get $9 million, less than the initial offer that was given to Wilder, 12.5? Andy Ruiz defeated Joshua, looked good in doing it, brings a different market, a Hispanic market, it brings something interesting. He made the fight interesting. Joshua got shut out. Joshua lost every single round, and you don't want to pay the man. So this shows me the culprit for why these fights are so hard to make. Same thing with Dillian White. Dillian White tried to get a rematch. He was like, yo, I knocked out former champions, Lucas Brown. I fought a former champion in Joseph Parker, dropped him twice. It was really once, but they ruled it as 2. And I survived a late scare in the 12th round, but I beat him nonetheless. I hurt Joseph Parker, something that Anthony Joshua never did when he fought Parker. Then I came and cleaned up my work with Derek Chisora and knocked him out, leveled him with 1 shot. I won a Joshua rematch. And then they did a brief negotiation with no intent on really fighting Dillian White. What they wanted to use Dillian White as a bargaining chip to really make the fight that they wanted to make, which is Gerald Big Baby Miller. They wanted the more inexperienced guy who can trash talk and hasn't fought Joshua, because Dillian White has a win over Joshua in the amateurs, and he even rocked him in the pro fight, even though he got knocked out ultimately. Gerald Miller hadn't fought no one even remotely close to Anthony Joshua, so they'd rather take their chances with that than Dillian White, who's known to give Joshua tough fights, right, and has a win over him in the amateurs. So they played Dillian White. He was allegedly shopping deals with PBC and ESPN, but he decided to stay loyal to Slave Room. And Dillian White, he couldn't get the Joshua fight. He said he got offered less money than he got for the Derek Chisora rematch. How is that possible? How can he get less money than in the AJ rematch, knowing they have bad blood and a domestic rivalry, than he made in Derek Chisora fight? So that's another fight. Same thing with Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz was sought after Gerald Miller failed a drug test, because that's how it backfired for Team Joshua. The guy that they picked failed a drug test, multiple drug tests with multiple drugs. So that looked horrible, and they needed a late replacement. They allegedly really wanted to fight a southpaw, even though they hadn't been training for a southpaw in Luis Ortiz. And then Luis Ortiz wasn't, the fight fizzled out over money. So, between Eddie Hearn and DAZN in general, that DAZN money is looking funny in the light. How come they can't lock up some of these fights? How come it's not just like, oh, we offer someone and then the fight gets announced? Andy Ruiz not content with what he's being offered. Luis Ortiz, fight fizzled out over money. Dillian White rematch, fight fizzled out over money. You couldn't make the Wilder fight, and one of the main issues was money. Wilder said, I'm the world champion. I'll go to the UK, but, make it worth my while. Let's get a percentage split. So again, if this doesn't prove to you who is guilty of making these negotiations harder and acting, like prima donnas, then I don't know what to tell you. Because now you have another fighter who's not happy with the paycheck for this level of a fight, and he's somehow, how can Andy Ruiz in a heavyweight fight, heavyweight is the highest division in boxing, after his performance, how can he possibly make less than Danny Jacobs made versus Canelo? And Canelo Jacobs, that's my guy. The fight itself was underwhelming. I expected more from both fighters. We can probably expect fireworks from Joshua Ruiz. The first fight was really good. You get what I'm saying? How is it possible that Ruiz can't get even what Jacobs made? Like I said, that DAZN money looking funny. Same thing with Canelo Alvarez. How is it that the Canelo, the biggest star in boxing, negotiating with Kovalev, and they offer Kovalev a little bit less than half of what Jacobs got? They're offering Kovalev $5-6 million, but Jacobs got $12 million reported. So, it just doesn't make sense. You have a heavyweight fight. It could be big. It could be global. You have different countries like Mexico, the United States, and the UK all tied to it. You don't put it in any of those locations. You try to take it to Saudi Arabia. Eddie Hearns and Team Joshua, I think they've made a lot of mistakes in the heavyweight division. And I'll just be glad when this little run is over so we can get back to, unifications, undisputed, and, just get some new blood in there. Andy Ruiz beating Joshua was a step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned, because I don't think him or his team act like Eddie Hearns and are going to play all these games and lowball everybody. You haven't really seen that with PBC. You haven't seen Errol Spence and Sean Porter. People speculated, hey, what's taking so long? But they handled whatever they needed to handle behind the scenes, and now the fight's made. They're doing press conferences for it and everything. Pacquiao Thurman, same thing. So how is it that these other fights are getting made and situated, but the big stars like Anthony Joshua and Canelo that are with DAZN, these fights seem like huge obstacles to get over the line? And you can't say it's just because it's an Al Heyman fighter, because Canelo was negotiating with non-Al Heyman fighters. Because I know a lot of people like to blame the black man, Al Heyman, and say, oh, it's because Ruiz is with Al Heyman, so he's making things complex. No, because Canelo had the same issue. Derevyanchenko's an Al Heyman fighter, but Kovalev isn't. So how are you having the same issue? It's just all across the board. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I do think the $9 million is bullshit. We Unpacked, coming to you live, Boxing Ego Unpacked. Let me know what you think of this video and the topic. Andy Ruiz only stated to get $9 million about a flat fixed rate, while Team Joshua banks this huge site fee in Saudi Arabia, $40 million plus dollars, plus the different additional monies. Andy Ruiz, as it sits, won't be entitled to none of that money because he signed a contract before he even beat Joshua, where Hearns' team tried to lock him into this less than $10 million rate. Very absurd. This whole fight, this whole reason we're even talking about a rematch, because Ruiz, not Joshua. Joshua did nothing. Joshua quit in the fight. So his star power has taken a major hit. Ruiz is the new star. He's the new blood. He's the one that shook up the division. He's the X factor that got people even wanting to see the rematch, because if it was based on Joshua's performance, it was a one-sided beatdown. So he didn't really even do much to warrant a rematch. Under normal terms, if he wasn't a champion, no one would even request seeing a rematch. It's like Mayweather versus Gotti or Canelo or, Robert Guerrero. The rematch is not even needed based on what happened in the first fight. The only reason we're even going here is because of what Ruiz did, and it was considered an upset, and they had a contractual rematch clause. We Unpack. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Make sure you smash the like button. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.